This is the Get Global Young Professionals Talk Global Health podcast, envisioned and created by the Irish Global Health Network and their student outreach team. I am your host, Megan Davis, Communications and Events Intern at the Irish Global Health Network and second-year medical student at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. In this series, join me and my student outreach team co-host Aidan Desjardins, a microbiology student at Trinity College, as we talk to inspiring young professionals leading the charge in their respective fields, often operating in sidelines to their career, following their passions above all. Today we are very excited to speak to Líbhan Collins. Here is a segment from our conversation.
When you're in the role of a healthcare professional, you approach it in such a way where, again, you're giving your patient autonomy and you're allowing them to voice concerns.
Líbhan currently works in pharmaceutical clinical trials. She has a degree in Health and Society from Dublin City University and a master's in Immunology and Global Health from Maynooth University. She took her master's thesis in Maastricht University, where she did collaborative research on vaccine programs and hesitancy. She did an internship with Gorey-Malawi Health Partnership and has done volunteering in various capacities. She is passionate about the use of evidence-based and locally led interventions in disease prevention. Welcome to the podcast, Líbhan.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks so much for having me.
We like to start these episodes by asking our guests how they became involved in the field of global health. Would you mind sharing your story?
Yeah, of course. So I suppose I first discovered global health when I did my undergrad in DCU in Health and Society. So when I was there, I found myself always thinking in lectures like, whoa, this topic or this fact that we're doing at the moment is so important. Why am I only learning about this now? Why did I not learn this in school? Why doesn't everyone know this? And so that degree was really nice, really broad degree, and it gave me a huge interest in science communication. And so from there, I wanted to, I suppose, build upon my scientific knowledge and bring that to global health. And so I did a master's in Immunology and Global Health in Maynooth, and I got the chance as well to do my research thesis in the Netherlands. And I suppose from there I found networking really helpful. So I spent some time attending various lectures and conferences that were on, a lot of them actually run by the Irish Global Health Network and things like that. And so through those mediums, I was able to meet with other people who were interested in global health and kind of see avenues for work later on. And so when I graduated from my master's, I spent some time doing volunteering, and I did an internship with the Gorey-Malawi Health Partnership. So from there as well, networking got me even further again, in the sense that the GPs that I worked with in Gorey were able to refer me on to a cardiologist in Dublin, where I worked as a research assistant for a while, and eventually as a study coordinator. So that led me to where I am now as a clinical trial project manager in pharmaceuticals.
So we understand that you're passionate about science communication. In your opinion, how can health professionals best integrate science communication in their work and practice to inform and inspire the public about scientific knowledge and global health?
Yeah, so to me, the most important thing regards science communication is for healthcare professionals or scientists to recognize that there's a knowledge gap between an expert opinion or even someone who is a student in health sciences or similar. And there's a gap there between their knowledge and the layperson's knowledge. And it's on us as someone who has experience or knowledge in the field to bridge that gap and to look at it from the perspective of the people we're trying to inform about things. So using, evidence and community-led interventions is really important. McLachlan, who's a professor at Maynooth, has some really interesting studies on this, and it's becoming, I suppose, more and more the best practice in global health work to focus on community-led interventions and run things from the perspective of the people that you're trying to assist, rather than, just coming in and imposing your opinions or your experiences on others. And so I think that's really important because it offers as well an autonomy and a choice to people that you're trying to help or inform about things. An interesting thing that's going on at the moment in Ireland is the government have set up a science communication collective for COVID-19. So this is a group of students and young professionals in science and medical backgrounds who are using social media to, I suppose, educate people on different things about the pandemic. So explaining through Instagram and TikTok videos, this is how the vaccine works, or this is how herd immunity works. And I actually did some reading on this during my thesis, that people tend to believe their close friends or kind of more of a people in their peer group more than they would listen to an authoritative figure. And so this is why social media can be really important in science communication. And so hopefully that collective that they've put together will be expanded to different areas of healthcare in the future. That would be really interesting to get involved in.
We understand that you focused on, for your research, for your MSc, on vaccine programs and hesitancy. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so my project mainly focused on looking at policy and guidelines and various documentation from the Irish government and how the vaccine program for 0 to 4 years old was standardized. And then I worked with some other students from Germany and Kenya and the Netherlands. And so we then did a comparative of those 4 countries. And in particular for Ireland, something that I discussed a little bit was how our uptake rates for vaccination in Ireland is pretty high compared to a lot of countries, but there's still room for some more flexibility in that. At the moment, the people who have low rates of uptake are marginalized groups, so the homeless and the traveling community and the Roma community. And you will see it in all the outbreaks over the last 15 years or so. It tends to be centralized to those communities. And so it's important to, while the guidelines are there, it's important to have some flexibility in making things a bit more accessible for groups like that maybe don't feel as welcome, or that they might not be registered with a GP and various things like that. So that was, I suppose, one part of the project that I focused on. And as well, I looked at hesitancy, which I suppose has become more relevant recently. So there was 3 main reasons for people to be hesitant, and one of them was having a lack of voice or input surrounding the decision to be vaccinated or the system that is there in place. And so allowing people who are hesitant or people who may have fears around it to voice their concerns. So it comes back a little bit, I suppose, to the science communication side of things, that when you're in a healthcare professional, in the role of a healthcare professional, that you approach it in such a way where, again, you're giving your patient autonomy and you're allowing them to voice concerns. And this comes in then to the second point, which is trust. So a lot of people who might not trust healthcare professionals or scientists would be people who have, I suppose, maybe strong religious beliefs where the religion discourages it, or again, they might be marginalized groups where they have felt excluded from society and so don't feel very welcome in these systems. And so in gaining trust, again, it's all about discussion, allowing input, and looking at it from the perspective of the person you're speaking with. So the other thing that came up was perception and worldview. So if you're a parent, your perception is that I need to be a good parent, and in order to be a good parent, I need to achieve A, B, and C. And so when some parents see that, I suppose, the risk of vaccination might be these small adverse events, but sometimes in their mind, their perception is skewed because of they're focusing on their child's health. So they may not recognize that the risk of illness outweighs the risk of the vaccine adverse events. And so a lot of how we can tackle hesitancy and how we can improve communication is just about, I suppose, empathy really, and standing in the other person's shoes and asking them what their fears are, and working through that with them. I did some interviews with GPs for this project, and again, a lot of them were saying that, they did believe that as a GP that it was part of their role to help overcome people's fears.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. We'd like to ask you about your experience during your internship with Gorey-Malawi Health Partnership and something that you learned during the internship that stood out to you.
Yeah, so the Gorey-Malawi Health Partnership was founded by two Gorey-based GPs, Peter Harrington and Joe Gallagher. So they work with clinical fellows in Mzuzu, and so they support training and they send medical devices and support in any other way they can. There's two hospitals, I believe, in Mzuzu that they work with. And so when I was part of this group, we organised for the clinical fellows to visit Ireland, and we carried out workshops. The focus is primarily on non-communicable diseases. So we looked a lot at COPD and asthma and diabetes and cardiovascular disease as well. And so we did training workshops for the clinical fellows and some other interesting research as well. Something that I learned while I was working there, which, even after 4.5 years of university focusing on health, I was shocked to realize that this figures from 2018. Only 1.8% of development assistance for health was put towards NCDs. So when you think about the disease burden of these types of diseases, it doesn't add up that only 1.8% of that type of funding is focused there. So there's a few reasons for this. Some of it is that there's not a lot of data on this. It's poorly documented, and the transparency of where different funding goes is poorly documented. So it's difficult to analyze exactly how much money is needed, I suppose, for these diseases. As well, there's kind of, again, a type of perception that there's a stigma around NCDs, I suppose, that they're self-inflicted or that they're an inevitability of aging. But it's more complex than that. It's often influenced by environmental conditions, and especially in low middle income countries, as I suppose their infectious disease rates slowly improving and child morbidity is improving, so the life expectancy is increasing, and so then there's a major increase in NCDs in those types of countries. And as well, they don't have the same, I suppose they're not caught up with the science communication in the sense of warnings around tobacco and alcohol use, and as well air pollution in these areas. They're suffering a lot from that. So I think NCDs are projected to overtake all other causes of premature mortality before 2030 in sub-Saharan African countries. So I think a lot of people aren't aware of this, and it's even I was shocked at seeing that. And something that's very telling of how little consideration has been given to these diseases is that until 2019, the OECD framework for tracking donor assistance, it didn't even track NCDs before 2019, and as well, NCDs were not mentioned in the Millennial Development Goals. It only came into play for the Sustainable Development Goals. So again, it shows how it kind of has been a neglected area in global health. When you think of global health, it's easy to think of HIV and AIDS and TB, and these are the things that deservedly get a lot of funding and attention, but it's important to have a broader perspective on other issues that are there as well.
Now, before we wrap up, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone looking to pursue a career in the field of global health?
So I would say networking is really important. Even if you're anxious or introverted, as I definitely am, just keep going to events or online events at the moment and keep trying to meet people and talk to people, because that's how I got all my jobs, all my internships to date, is from going out and telling people I needed a job. So that's really important. And it also is good to see what other people are doing. It's really interesting to get an insight into projects that some of your colleagues might be working on. And the other thing I would say is to keep reading, read as much as possible, and read things from other perspectives that you mightn't have taught to read, or from universities that are not Western universities. Always keep looking out for other perspectives on things. I think that's really important in global health to recognize that, especially from an Irish perspective, we have to recognize our privilege, and that if we're going to be in a role where we're trying to help someone who is less well off than us, we need to consider their cultures and their perspectives on things, and use that to evolve. And science is always evolving, and you can't learn unless you're making mistakes, and unless you're seeing that you maybe have incorrect opinions on things that can evolve over time from meeting new people and learning. So
I completely agree. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Líbhan. If you would like to learn more about the Irish Global Health Network or the Student Outreach Team, visit www.globalhealth.ie, where you can sign up for our newsletters. Thanks again for tuning in.